000 to 045. The silence of the pre-dawn darkness hangs heavy over Normandy, France, on June 6, 1944. A gentle breeze rustles through the fields, carrying the scent of damp earth. Suddenly, a tearing sound shatters the stillness, the violent shriek of wood and canvas ripping apart. Out of the blackness, massive, ghost-like shapes hurtle towards the ground at terrifying speed. These are British Horsa gliders, not parachutes, not bombers, but silent, unpowered aircraft, plummeting towards two vital bridges. At precisely 0:16 hours, the lead glider slams into the earth, just 47 yards from its target, the Caen Canal Bridge. Within moments, men pour from the wreckage, not with the chaos of a crash, but with a terrifying, almost supernatural precision. How can an operation so reliant on silent, fragile aircraft, landing in absolute darkness, be anything but a suicidal gamble? Yet, this is the opening act of D-Day, a mission of impossible odds, and it hinges on a single, audacious plan. 0:45 to 3 o'clock. Our story begins with Major John Howard, the unassuming leader of D Company, 2nd Battalion, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry. Born on December 8, 1912, in the working-class West End of London, Howard's background was far from the traditional officer class of the British Army. He first enlisted as a private soldier in 1932, serving 6 years before leaving to become a police constable in Oxford. When war broke out in September 1939, he was recalled to service, a second chance that would define his life. This time, Howard rose swiftly through the ranks, earning his commission as a second lieutenant in 1940 and becoming a major by 1942, taking command of D Company. Howard was not a man of privilege, but a man of meticulous detail and relentless dedication. He was known for his rigorous training methods, pushing his men to their physical and mental limits. He instilled in them a unique blend of discipline and camaraderie, earning their respect through his own unwavering commitment. His company, the Ox and Bucks, was part of the British 6th Airborne Division, a unit designed for swift, decisive action behind enemy lines. They were an underdog company, facing an unprecedented mission that demanded absolute perfection. Their task was to spearhead the largest amphibious invasion in history, to be the very first British fighting force to land on the European continent on D-Day. The stakes could not be higher. Failure here could jeopardize the entire eastern flank of the Allied landings, leaving the forces on Sword Beach vulnerable to devastating German counterattacks. 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. The mission Howard and his men faced was audacious, bordering on the suicidal. They were to capture two critically important bridges, the Caen Canal Bridge and the River Orne Bridge, located near the villages of Bénouville and Ranville, respectively. These bridges were the only eastern exit route for British forces landing on Sword Beach and, conversely, the only crossing points for German armored divisions, particularly the formidable 21st Panzer Division, to launch a devastating counterattack against the vulnerable Allied beachheads. The order was clear: capture them intact and hold them at all costs. Demolition of these structures by the Germans would have isolated the British 6th Airborne Division and trapped the seaborne invasion force. The skepticism surrounding such an operation was immense. No one believed it was truly possible to land unpowered gliders with such pinpoint accuracy in the dead of night, deep within enemy territory. The gliders, airspeed horses, were large, wooden, and fabric-covered aircraft, capable of carrying 25 to 30 fully equipped troops, or a jeep and a 6-pounder anti-tank gun, along with their two pilots. They were inherently fragile, designed for a single mission. A crash landing could easily result in mass casualties before a single shot was fired. The notion of silently gliding into a heavily defended area, landing within yards of the objective, and then immediately engaging the enemy, seemed like a fantasy. They were all wrong. Major Howard was not one to be deterred by perceived impossibilities. He approached the planning and training with an almost obsessive attention to detail, a characteristic that would become legendary. His company was reinforced with 2 platoons from B Company and a detachment of Royal Engineers, bringing the total assault force to 181 men. Their training was unlike anything seen before. Howard requested and received a training ground near the River Exe in Exeter, England, that closely mimicked the terrain and conditions around the Caen Canal and River Orne. For months, they rehearsed the assault repeatedly, day and night, in all weather conditions. Pilots practiced instrument flying, using stopwatches for precise course changes, and even wore darkened goggles to simulate night conditions. Howard drilled his men in every conceivable scenario. What if only one glider reached the bridges? What if all the accompanying sappers became casualties? His men were cross-trained to perform the engineers' tasks, ready to use assault boats if the bridges were blown. He emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. Every soldier knew their role, their target, and their fallback plan. This relentless preparation was crucial, forging a cohesive unit that understood the gravity of their mission. By the end of February 1942, Howard would later recall, "I had started the training schedule for D Company of the 52nd Oxen Bucks, now part of the airborne force, that would take my company right up to D-Day." This was not just training, it was an indoctrination into a philosophy of audacious precision, a belief that even the most impossible mission could be achieved through sheer will and meticulous preparation. The fate of the entire D-Day invasion, the largest military operation in history, would depend on whether this belief could translate into reality in the dark, chaotic early hours of June 6, 1944. 8:32:00. As the calendar turns from June 5 to June 6, 1944, the air at Raft Tarrant Rushton in Dorset, England, crackles with a nervous energy. At 22:56 hours on June 5, 6 Halifax bombers, each towing a fragile Horsa glider, lift off into the night sky. Inside the gliders, 181 men of D Company, Oxen Bucks, along with their Royal Engineers, are packed tightly, laden with their equipment. Major John Howard is in the lead glider, callsign 91, piloted by Staff Sergeant Jim Walwork and Sergeant John Ainsworth. The tension is palpable, a silent agreement among the men that this is the moment they have trained for, the moment that will define their lives. The journey across the English Channel is fraught with peril. Flying at 7,000 feet, the Halifax bombers battle the drag and turbulence created by the gliders. Navigator Walter Russell Wright, aboard one of the Halifax bombers, feels the drag of the glider as it bumped around in our slipstreams, each time pulling us a little way off course. The pilots of the gliders, skilled and courageous, are essentially flying blind, relying on the bomber's navigation and their own instruments. They know the risks. Horsa gliders, while sturdy and maneuverable, are also vulnerable. At 0:07 on June 6, the aircraft cross the Normandy coast. The bombers release their gliders at 6,000 feet, and the horses begin their silent, terrifying descent. The glider pilots initiate a steep, controlled dive, aiming for a precise landing zone just yards from the bridges. This is the moment of truth. The descent is rapid, the ground rushing up to meet them. Major Howard, peering out of the open door at 1,000 feet, sees the lush green fields and grazing cattle, a stark contrast to the impending violence. He recalls, "As we came into land most of us were scared, but our enthusiasm to get the job done overcame the fear." At 0:16 hours, glider number 1, carrying Major Howard's platoon, crashes through the barbed wire surrounding the German defenses on the western bank of the Caen Canal. The impact is brutal, tearing off the landing wheels and belly skid. The rapid deceleration hurls equipment and men forward. The glider skids to a halt, incredibly, just 47 yards from the canal bridge, its nose buried in the earth. "I thought I'd bashed my head and gone blind," Howard would later recount. "Couldn't see a thing. Then one of my men pointed out that when I'd bashed my head my tin helmet had wedged over my eyes. What a relief." Immediately, the men spring into action. They are out of the wreckage within seconds, their training kicking in. The German sentries, caught completely by surprise, are quickly overwhelmed. The 736th Grenadier Regiment of the 716th Infantry Division, consisting largely of conscripted Eastern European troops under German officers, is stationed at the bridges, but they are unprepared for such a lightning assault. The canal bridge has 3 machine gun emplacements on its western bank, with another machine gun and an anti-tank gun on the eastern bank. Lieutenant Den Brotheridge leads 25 platoon in a charge across the Caen Canal Bridge, blowing his whistle to signal the assault. Grenades are hurled at a German pillbox. Amidst the chaos of the initial firefight, Brotheridge is tragically struck in the neck by German fire, becoming the first Allied soldier killed in action on D-Day. Despite seeing their leader fall, his men press on, their momentum irresistible. The bridge is secured within 10 minutes. Meanwhile, the other gliders are landing. Glider Nu. MBER-2, carrying Lieutenant David Wood's 24 platoon, lands at 0:18 hours. It breaks in half, coming to rest at the edge of a large pond. Lance Corporal Fred Greenhalgh is knocked unconscious and thrown from the wreckage, drowning in the pond. He is possibly the first fatal casualty of the operation. Despite the catastrophic landing, the surviving men, dazed but determined, join the fight. Glider No. 3, with Lieutenant Smith's 23 platoon, lands seconds later, delivering its troops directly into the fray. The second group of 3 gliders, under Captain Brian Priday, simultaneously targets the River Orne Bridge, 500 yards to the east. This bridge will later be known as Horsa Bridge, in honor of the gliders that carried the troops. Lieutenant Tony Hooper's 22 platoon, followed by Lieutenant Todd Sweeney's 23 platoon and Lieutenant Dennis Fox's 17 platoon, execute similar daring landings. The German defenders at the River Orne Bridge are equally surprised and quickly overcome. Within 15 minutes of the first landing, Major Howard receives confirmation that the River Orne Bridge is also secured. The success signal is ready. Major Howard instructs his radio operator, Corporal Tuppenderry, to transmit the code words. Overcome with excitement, Tuppenderry shouts into the radio, "Ham and jam, ham and jam, ham and bloody jam." The message, indicating that both bridges have been captured intact, echoes through the command channels, a beacon of success for the massive invasion still hours away. The initial phase is a triumph of daring and precision, but the mission is far from over. Securing the bridges is only half the battle. They must now hold them against an inevitable German counterattack. Howard's men quickly establish defensive positions, preparing for the fight to come. They dig in, setting up machine gun posts and preparing their PIAT, projector, infantry, anti-tank weapons. The engineers begin preparing explosive charges, ready to detonate if the bridges are threatened with capture by the enemy, denying the Germans their use. The first German reaction comes swiftly. At approximately 1:30, less than an hour after the gliders landed, 2 armed German half-tracks, belonging to an engineer company and followed by panzer grenadiers, attempt to attack the Caen Canal Bridge. The lead half-track is met with a devastating blast from a Piat, immediately halting the advance. The sudden, unexpected resistance throws the German counterattack into disarray, buying crucial time for the British defenders. The battle for the bridges has truly begun. The sounds of distant gunfire and explosions begin to echo across the Norman countryside. The main airborne landings, involving thousands of British paratroopers from the 6th Airborne Division, are now underway. However, many parachute drops are scattered due to poor visibility and enemy fire, leaving some units disoriented and delayed in reaching their objectives. This means Howard's small force is isolated, holding the critical bridgehead alone for longer than anticipated. At 3 o'clock hours, the first reinforcements arrive. Elements of the 7th Parachute Battalion, though their drop has been scattered, and it takes time for them to consolidate and reach the bridges. Their arrival is a welcome sight, bolstering the exhausted ox and bucks. The combined force strengthens the defensive perimeter, preparing for more determined German assaults. The importance of holding these bridges is paramount. They are the linchpin for the entire eastern flank of the invasion. As the morning progresses, the German forces, particularly elements of the 21st Panzer Division, begin to organize a more concerted counterattack. These are seasoned German troops, well equipped and determined to retake the vital crossings. Howard and his men face the terrifying prospect of confronting German tanks and armored vehicles with relatively light weaponry. The PIATs, while effective at close range, require immense courage to deploy against advancing armor. The hours drag on, a continuous cycle of skirmishes, probes, and more serious attacks. German infantry advances, supported by mortar and machine gun fire, attempting to dislodge the British from their positions. The British defenders, though weary, hold their ground, repelling each assault. The training, the discipline, and the sheer determination instilled by Major Howard prove invaluable in these desperate moments. The weather remains a factor, with persistent cloud cover hindering air support. The men are exposed, their positions under constant threat. Every bullet fired, every grenade thrown, every casualty sustained, adds to the growing tension. The knowledge that the main seaborne landings are hours away, and that their survival depends on holding these two small bridges weighs heavily on every soldier. By mid-morning, the intensity of the German attacks increases. The British defenders, now a mix of glider-borne infantry and paratroopers, are stretched thin. They communicate using field telephones and runners, coordinating their defense against a numerically superior and increasingly aggressive enemy. The sound of distant artillery fire from the German lines adds to the cacophony of battle, shells exploding in the surrounding fields and occasionally impacting dangerously close to the bridge itself. Major Howard moves constantly among his men, offering words of encouragement, assessing positions, and directing fire. His calm demeanor, even under intense pressure, is a source of strength for his troops. He understands that leadership by example is critical in such a grueling fight. Hold until relieved, the unwritten order from command, echoes in his mind, a solemn promise to maintain their grip on these crucial arteries. The battle is a testament to the human spirit, a small group of men facing down the might of a determined enemy. Their initial surprise advantage now replaced by sheer tenacity. The fate of the D-Day landings, and perhaps the course of the war, hangs in the balance over these two unassuming bridges in Normandy. 32:0038:00. The afternoon sun, now higher in the sky, casts long, shifting shadows across the Caen Canal. The air is thick with the smell of cordite, damp earth, and fear. It is approximately 1300 hours, and the German counterattack reaches a fever pitch. From the east, across the open fields, a fresh wave of German infantry, supported by mortar fire, pushes relentlessly towards the Pegasus Bridge. Simultaneously, reports come in of armored vehicles attempting to flank the Horsa Bridge. The British defenders, exhausted from over 12 hours of continuous fighting since their glider landings, are pushed to their absolute limit. Their ammunition is running low, casualties are mounting, and every man feels the strain of the relentless German pressure. Major Howard, his face grimed with dirt and sweat, is at the Pegasus Bridge, directing his men. He watches as German soldiers attempt to cross a nearby ford, trying to bypass the main bridge defenses. "Concentrate fire on that ford," he barks, his voice hoarse but steady. Machine guns spit tracers, cutting down the advancing enemy. A heavy German machine gun, positioned in a cluster of trees, opens a devastating crossfire, pinning down one of Howard's platoons. Rounds rip through the air, embedding themselves in the steel girders of the bridge and kicking up dust from the road. The sound is deafening, a cacophony of explosions, rifle fire, and shouts. A German Panzer IV tank, its ominous silhouette slowly emerging from the tree line to the east, begins to advance towards the Horsa Bridge. The sight of the tank sends a shiver through the weary British troops. They have been fighting for hours, holding against infantry and light vehicles, but a tank is a different beast entirely. A lone PIAT team, led by a courageous corporal, scrambles to position themselves, their hearts pounding. They know this is a desperate gamble. The tank grinds forward, its main gun traversing, searching for targets. The corporal yells, "Wait! Wait for it!" He knows he has only one shot, One chance to stop this steel monster before it can breach their defenses and turn the tide of the battle. The air vibrates with the roar of the tank's engine and the relentless chatter of machine guns. Every eye is fixed on the approaching behemoth. The corporal takes a deep, shaky breath, aiming his PIAT. He fires. A blinding flash, a dull thud, and then the projectile streaks towards the tank. It strikes the front armor with a metallic clang, but the angle is poor. The round ricochets harmlessly. The tank continues its advance, seemingly impervious. Despair threatens to creep in. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the din of battle, the skirl of bagpipes. From the west, down the road from Sword Beach, a column of men marches purposefully towards the bridges. It is Brigadier Lord Lovett's 1st Special Service Brigade, the Commandos, led by the legendary piper Bill Millen, playing Highland Laddie. Their arrival is a surge of adrenaline, a visible sign of relief for the exhausted defenders. Lovett himself, a towering figure, strides onto the bridge, famously offering Howard a handshake and apologizing for being a few minutes late. The Commandos, fresh from the beaches, immediately reinforce the positions, their heavier weaponry and fresh resolve turning the tide. The Panzer IV, still advancing, is now met with concentrated fire from the newly arrived anti-tank guns. Another PIAT round, this time from a different team, finds its mark on the tank's side, disabling its tracks. The German advance falters, then retreats. The bridges are held. 38:00 end. The capture and tenacious defense of the Caen Canal and River Orne bridges, an operation later dubbed Pegasus Bridge and Horsa Bridge, in tribute to the airborne Fosses emblem and their gliders, stands as one of the most successful and crucial actions of D-Day. Major John Howard's D Company, 2nd Battalion, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry, achieved an objective that many considered impossible. They landed 6 Horsa gliders with astonishing precision in the dead of night, securing 2 vital bridges intact within minutes of touching down. This lightning strike prevented the German 21st Panzer Division from launching an immediate, devastating counterattack against the vulnerable Allied forces landing on Sword Beach. The cost was not insignificant. 2 British soldiers were killed, Lance Corporal Fred Greenhalgh, who drowned during the landing, and Lieutenant Den Brotheridge, the first Allied soldier killed by enemy fire on D-Day, leading the charge across the Caen Canal Bridge. 14 others were wounded. Yet, for these sacrifices, the mission secured the eastern flank of the invasion, creating a vital bridgehead for the subsequent advance inland. Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory later praised the glider pilots, stating the operation included the most outstanding flying achievements of the war. Major John Howard's meticulous planning, relentless training, and unwavering leadership were instrumental in this success. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his conduct, presented in the field by General Bernard Montgomery himself. Howard's approach transformed a seemingly suicidal mission into a textbook example of airborne assault, demonstrating the unparalleled effectiveness of glider-borne troops when precision and surprise were paramount. The men of D Company were among the first Allied soldiers to set foot on French soil on D-Day, and the first to engage the enemy in combat. Their bravery and determination in holding the bridges for hours against fierce German counterattacks, before being relieved by the 7th Parachute Battalion and later Lord Lovett's Commandos, bought invaluable time for the wider invasion to unfold. In his later life, Major Howard frequently returned to Normandy, laying wreaths at the site where his gliders landed, and lecturing cadets on the lessons learned from this incredible feat of arms. The bridges and the surrounding area became a symbol of courage and tactical brilliance. The story of Pegasus Bridge is not merely a tale of military success. It is a profound testament to the power of human will, meticulous preparation, and the extraordinary bravery of ordinary men facing impossible odds in the defense of freedom. Their actions on that dark, pivotal morning paved the way for the liberation of Europe, etching their names into the annals of history forever. If this story moved you, subscribe. New forgotten stories every week. Which moment surprised you most? Comment below.